Hello students, this video is about the Maratha and Sikh kingdoms that emerged in early modern India or late medieval India. When it comes to the Marathas, there are certain unique characteristics of the Maratha kingdom that emerged in India in the late medieval time. So we see two terms very commonly that are associated with the Marathas. One is the svarajya and the other one is fitna. So when it comes to svarajya and fitna, these are two closely connected terms, and when the Marathas claim that their state is their svarajya, they also claim that it's a part of the fitna. So let's understand what these two terms svarajya and fitna means. So the sources that are available on the Marathas and on the Mughals, these sources says that the Marathas accepted Mughal zamindari. So the Mughals called the Marathas as their zamindar, especially the early Marathas. And the Maratha sources like the Ajapatra, the text called Ajapatra, these accept this kind of terminology. They accept that they were the zamindars of the Mughal suzerainty. In Aurangzeb's time also, we see that the Marathas were allowed to collect taxes like Chauth and Sardois from certain areas. So with that dual nature, that on the one hand the Marathas claim themselves as sovereign, at the same time they also accepted that they are zamindars of the Mughals. This was visible through the 17th century when we see this two pattern, like on the one hand the Marathas called themselves Swarajya, and on the other hand they also collected taxes that the Mughal Empire authorized them to collect. So in the both way, they accepted Mughal suzerainty, at the same time they claim that they have this Swarajya. So what this Swarajya is, that it is opposite to the term Prarajya. The Pararajya means enemy state, and here Pararajya means the Mughal state. So Maratha Swarajya means basically acceptance of the Mughals, the sovereignty of the Mughals as Pararajya, and at the same time claiming themselves as a sovereign, and at the same time accepting the role of zamindars of the Mughals, and by that way accepting the authority given by the Mughals to collect Chauth and Sardois from certain areas which were not directly ruled by the Marathas. So we see this duality in this time. The Maratha Swarajya was based on conquest and sedition. So the Swarajya concept itself was based on the idea of fitna. Now literally fitna means sedition. However, fitna is not a simple term. To understand fitna, we have to understand that the concept itself accepts the Mughals as a kind of state which is sovereign, or which is a kind of umbrella term where the Mughals are the sovereign state, and the Mughals give some kind of authority to some Brahmanical state. The Brahmanical Marathas, they give some kind of authority to collect taxes and to populate the regions, because the Marathas were also allowed to collect taxes from certain areas, allowed to that means allowed to populate these areas so that these places get tilled, agriculture happens, and the people pay taxes. So this whole concept of fitna also means that the Mughals were getting gentrified. Gentrified means they were getting Brahmanized or getting Hinduized in some way. So the Mughal sovereignty was accepted. The Mughal at the same time, the rights given by the Mughals to collect taxes were also accepted. The Marathas also claimed that they are independent ruler. They have some sort of sovereignty. And their sovereignty was emanating from their Hindu identity. So while accepting the Mughals as their overlord or their fitwa, the Marathas gentrified the Mughals. So the Mughals became kind of a ruling authority which is also Hinduized. Mughals called this Swarajya as service tenure or zamindari. So when the Marathas called themselves Swarajya, the Mughals also accepted this terminology and this identity and called this as service tenure. In the 18th century, Mughals and Marathas shared this Swarajya, and this was not exclusive. So this is not that only the Mughals and Marathas had this kind of understanding through which they had created this concept of Swarajya, where they had shared power. So on the one hand, the Marathas had accepted Mughal suzerainty and called them as the Brahmanical ruler or the universal ruler. At the same time, the Mughals had accepted the Maratha claim for svarajya and called them as a tenure. So it was different with different other kingdoms also. The Mughals had similar kind of relation. So it was not exclusive to these two polities. There never were clear-cut boundaries to the mahals to which the Marathas had control over or sovereignty over. So even when the Marathas were often given the right to collect chaut and sardes mukhi, these mahals were never clearly identified. So the places from where the Marathas were allowed to collect taxes or allowed to share some kind of execute some kind of authority, these were never clear. Besides the revenue of the districts, which were later defined as his Swarajya by the Mughals, Shivaji levied what was called Chaut and Sardes Mukhi. Chaut means 1/4 of the revenue of some surrounding Mughal districts during his Mulukgiri campaigns, and he had secured this right with that of the Sardes Mukhi or dues of the head Deshmukh of the assessed land revenue from Bijapur and Golconda. So when during Shivaji's reign, when he claimed certain areas as his Swarajya and which was accepted by the Mughals, he also laid claims over South and Sardes Mukhi from certain areas. In case of South, these were from Mughal administered districts, and Sardes Mukhi from the areas that were administered by the Deshmukhs. And now when we again look back at fitna or fitwa or sedition, fitna was basically a measure through which the Marathas laid claims over revenues. Fitna was a mixture of coercion, conciliation and intervention in existing local conflicts. So again, fitna was not specific to Mughal Maratha relations, but in general fitna literally means sedition. It also means conciliation. So basically it was a kind of method through which the Marathas would intervene in a territory and lay some kind of claim over the revenue from that area. So that does not mean direct rule or direct authority over that area, but it's having some kind of a right to collect some taxes or some kind of some amount of money from that particular area. According to Andre Wink, fitna can be equated with the political expedient of upajapa of the Indian Arthashastra, comprising conciliation, gift giving, so a dissension among and winning over of an enemy's local supporters, and involving the use of force only secondarily. So basically, when the use of force is not useful or it does not yield any result, people would resort to fitna. The polities would resort to fitna. And this fitna means kind of finding a middle path between direct exploitation or leaving a particular area. So they would basically lay some kind of claim, some kind of mediation over an area where two or more polities exist, and here they would appease each other by giving gifts or by showing sometimes they would sow dissension, they would create some kind of disharmony. In other times they would also try to appease the power. So basically it was more of kind of using tactic rather than using direct force over an area. In the Muslim world, fitna means sedition from a centralized authority. Wink argues that fitna does not mean sedition, but a form of reaction to the expanding Mughal authority in India. This was a continuation process between 14th and 17th century, and the emergence of Rajput and Sikh and the Jat rebellion were part of fitna. So this fitna was also not exclusive to Mughal Maratha relations. Fitna was also common in the relation of Mughals with other polities, other major polities in Indian subcontinent. So basically this was a tactic that was used to appease, sometimes to incite these polities, and the purpose was to create an environment where all the political parties involved can share some amount of power and some amount of economic resources. Fitna can be called as gentrification of the Muslim rule also. The Mughal rule was considered as fitwa or universal dominion. Emergence of Marathas did not mark an end of the Mughals. Fitna marked the end of illegitimate power. Fitna uphold the true sovereignty. So if you see like from outside, that fitna means universal dominion, and that is the Mughal rule. And if the Mughals use coercion over this local power, that would make the power illegitimate. So to legitimize this power over the mostly Hindu territories, this fitna technique was used, and here the power itself gets legitimized. The Mughal sovereignty gets gentrified. The rulers like the Marathas or the Rajput or Sikh, they continue to rule over their local areas, but at the same time they also call themselves as Swaraj or some sort of sovereign authority. At the same time they also accept Mughal suzerainty. So all of this comes together in making fitna as it was. Through the fitna, the Marathas in the 18th century called themselves sovereign without denying the Mughal authority. There were many Maratha families at the time of Shivaji's consecration in 1674. Marathas had alliance with the Mughals and other contemporary powers. Under Shahu's authority, Baji Rao granted sanat to his Sardars Pawar, Holkar and Sindhya, allowing them to levy the Sot and Sardesh Mukhi in Malwa and to retain the Mokasa portion for the payment of their troops. The Peshwaship, when started amongst the Marathas, it was also exactly campaigning from 1720, the beginning of Peshwaship, till the death of the Peshwa in 1740. And during these wars also, the government remained sort of a dual government, because while there was this Peshwaship, but still they paid their allegiance to the Mughals, especially when the attacks of Nadir Shah and Ahmad Shah Abdali happened. The Marathas offered their service to the Mughal Empire, and especially during the third battle of Panipat, the Marathas fought with the Mughals against Ahmad Shah Abdali and defeated. There was a treaty between the Mughals and the Marathas in 1752, by which the Marathas were allowed to collect Chhat and Sardesh Mukhi in northwestern provinces. Marathas fought with Mughals against Ahmad Shah Abdali in the third battle of Panipat, and after the 3 Anglo-Maratha wars, the Maratha regime came to an end. So what we understand about the concept of svarajya and fitna is that the svarajya was the term used by Marathas to claim their territory, and the Mughals accepted this concept of svarajya, and svarajya was in context of Pararajya or the Mughals. The Marathas also accepted Mughal suzerainty or fitna, that means universal dominion. So it was a mutually beneficial system where through the fitna system the Mughals legitimized their rule over Marathas, over other regional kingdoms, and they also accepted the zamindari or the right of tax collection of these local authorities, and these local authorities accepted Mughal suzerainty. At the same time they also enjoyed local power. The second topic is about the Sikhs.